The Senate's July 4th break is being canceled. Fireworks are likely in D.C. Lawmakers will struggle to reach a deal to raise the government's borrowing limit before that August 2nd deadline.
Yes, deadline. Are you dead if you cross that line? Well, despite all the warnings about what would happen without a compromise by then, former Reagan Budget Director David Stockman has said in the past this deadline isn't real. In fact, it's an outright lie. But we brought him back because we're getting closer and closer to August 2nd. And now things are heating up. And there are worries and concerns that we may lose our credit rating. Let's spin this story forward. Have you changed your opinion at all, or do you still feel that we could let this deadline pass and the U.S. would be fine?
No. First of all, the crisis is that we're broke as a country. After a 30-year deficit spree, we're out of balance sheet. $14 trillion of debt, and we're borrowing 43 cents on every dollar we're spending. So we have to have a major deficit reduction plan now before they raise the debt ceiling a dime, and that will require tax increases, which the Republicans are against, and entitlement reforms, which the Democrats oppose, but there's no way out. Now, as to August 2nd, that's entirely artificial. That is just propaganda from the Treasury. It's Tim Geithner again.
Well, give us your facts.
Well, the facts are that we have $200 billion a month of revenue flow right now. The run rate of interest payments on our national debt is $20 billion. Tim Geithner could take the first 3 days of revenue in August, put it in a cigar box, and we would be covered for the rest of the month. The run rate of Social Security is $60 billion a month. He could put 8 days in another hat box, and Social Security would be protected. The rest of it, there is no law that says the Treasury can't allocate, prioritize, and if we're going to delay some payments to the military-industrial complex contractors or some health insurance companies on Medicare, fine, because we can't keep kicking the can and pretending that we raise the debt ceiling and we'll get to it tomorrow. We're going to end up where Greece is if we don't stop this process, which is really getting bad.
All right, but we're notorious for kicking the can down the road. So you can't deny that the August 2nd debt ceiling deadline does provide a good negotiator, because these negotiations have totally stalled out.
Yeah, they have, and that's unfortunate, but we're so close to it now. They're going to say, we haven't agreed to enough of a plan, we haven't laid out all the details, we haven't vetted it, we haven't debated it, so let's just raise the debt ceiling and get back to it. I say no, because the August 2nd deadline isn't real. They can buy themselves weeks or months. Now, what it will do is spook the bond market, and we need that. We need the bond market actually to go south, interest rates to go up, the bond to sell off, so we get a catalyst to wake up these politicians that the credit card is finished.
What's the precedent for that? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you were with President Reagan back when he cut all kinds of deductions, but he lowered certain tax rates, but cut out the deductions. And you figured out ways to find wiggle room. But it seems intransigent at the moment. You said the Republicans won't raise taxes, which you say is what's needed, and the Democrats won't cut entitlements. That, to me, seems like a massive impasse. How to get through it?
Well, that's why we're effectively in default right now if that impasse remains. Anyone that can do the math, 24% of GDP spending, 15% in revenue, can see that we're heading for the wall unless both sides give. Now, the Republicans are especially at fault because for 30 years they've jawed about spending cuts and have never done it. Now the wolf is at the door, and we have to pay our bills. During the Reagan era, we raised taxes after the first big cut. We raised taxes 11 times, the equivalent of what would be $400 billion today. And guess what? The economy grew nicely in 83, 84, and 85 after taxes were raised, not because it's a good idea, but because at that point we had no choice and we had to pay our bills. Somehow an ideology is developed that if you don't like what's being spent in government, you don't have to pay your bills. That's not true. If you can't cut it, you've got to fund it.
All right, but if you're depending on the markets to signal lawmakers to get going and come to an agreement on deficit reduction, that hasn't happened yet. Now, we have seen yields come up slightly this week, largely because of Greece being resolved, at least for now, and the end of QE2. But there's still a lot of wiggle room.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's 19 Wall Street dealers sitting on hundreds of billions of inventory bonds with 98 to 1 leverage. just let a few weeks pass where they're in the middle of this fight without raising the debt ceiling, and you will see bonds sell off, interest rates go up. And frankly, this is the bad thing the Fed has done. We got rid of QE2 today, finally, and that was a artificial, downward pressure on interest rates. So the politicians sat there and say, look, we borrow 2-year money at 30 basis points. Why should we worry about the debt? That's the problem.
Orrin Hatch was here yesterday, and he said several times that the Democrats were spending way too much money. And then he also said there is no way he would put in any kind of tax increase. Now, you, as a Republican, are saying that that is actually needed to be part of the amalgam. We extended the Bush tax cuts. Is that something we should have done? I mean, that was, the Republicans pushed very hard for that, and the president agreed with it, too.
Yeah, and that was a huge mistake because it opened up another $400 or $500 billion of deficit this year that we're now trying to borrow, and we're up against the limit. Yesterday, the president, unbelievably, and I don't care about taxing the millionaires or billionaires, they should pay, that's okay, but unbelievably, he said, let's extend the temporary reduction in the Social Security tax, $100 billion a year next year to help the economy. They do this over and over. He's talking about the dire crisis of the debt ceiling, and yet he comes in and says, let's make the deficit bigger tomorrow and then get around to the problem 2, 4, 6 years down the road. I think that is a failed strategy, and we're just rolling the dice, waiting for something bad to happen.
David Stockman, we're glad you're here with us, playing the cards out. Thank you so much.
Interesting discussion.
David Stockman, former Reagan budget director. Now let's go over to